Just imagine. I came to my son's wedding, the boy I had given my whole life to, but his fiancée looked at me with disgust and said, "You'll embarrass us in that wheelchair. Please leave." My son said nothing. I quietly wheeled myself away, my heart shattered by their betrayal. But within 2 hours, their perfect wedding turned into complete chaos. Revenge? No, it was justice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The white rose from my corsage fell to the cathedral floor as I wheeled myself through the entrance. Petals scattered across polished marble like teardrops, each one reflecting the horror on Rebecca's face as she spotted me. What is she doing here? Rebecca's voice sliced through the gentle murmur of arriving wedding guests. Her wedding dress, the $8,000 gown I'd helped select and pay for, rustled as she stepped protectively in front of my son. "Thomas, you said she understood about staying home." I sat frozen in my wheelchair at the cathedral entrance, still clutching the small gift I'd wrapped myself that morning. White roses imported from some fancy florist filled every archway, their fragrance mixing with expensive perfume and quiet judgment. The stained glass windows above cast rainbow patterns on stone walls that had cost me 4 months of retirement savings to rent. "Rebecca, it's Thomas's wedding day." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "I just wanted to see my son get married." Thomas appeared beside her, his tuxedo perfectly fitted, his expression uncomfortable as winter frost. "Mom, I thought we discussed this. You said you understood." What did I understand? I looked between them, searching Thomas's face for the little boy who used to climb into my lap when thunderstorms scared him, even after the accident put me in this chair. Rebecca glanced nervously at the guests watching us. Women in designer dresses whispered behind their programs. Men in expensive suits pretended not to stare while clearly hanging on every word. This is awkward for everyone," she said, her voice tight with embarrassment. "People are starting to notice, and honestly, Eleanor, your wheelchair is going to be such a distraction during the ceremony." The words hit like a physical blow. 35 years of midnight fevers, homework help, and little league games collapsed into that single sentence. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe it would be better if you just went home, Mom. For everyone's sake." I stared at my son, my beautiful, successful son who I'd raised alone after his father died, who I'd put through law school working double shifts, who I'd believed in when the whole world said a single mother couldn't raise a good man. "She'll ruin all the photographs," Rebecca continued, her voice getting stronger now that Thomas wasn't defending me. "And honestly, that old wheelchair is going to make such noise during the ceremony. People will be looking at her instead of us." The cathedral fell silent except for the whispered conversations of guests pretending not to watch our family drama unfold. "I spent my life savings on this wedding," I said quietly, my hands gripping the wheels of my chair. "And we appreciate that, Mom, we really do," Thomas said quickly. "But that doesn't mean you have to." "Have to what?" "Have to be treated like your mother." My voice remained steady, though everything inside me was breaking apart. "Have to be acknowledged as family." Rebecca's face flushed red. "Look, Eleanor, I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings, but this is my wedding day. I've dreamed of this moment since I was a little girl, and I won't have it ruined by this." She gestured at my wheelchair like it was something dirty. Thomas looked at the floor. My son, the boy I'd taught to stand up to bullies, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, looked at the floor and said nothing. "Of course," I heard myself say, my voice calm and measured. "I understand completely." Relief flooded both their faces. "Thanks, Mom. You're being really understanding about this," Thomas said, already turning back toward his bride. I smiled, a real smile, though I couldn't have explained why. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'll head home now." "You don't have to leave entirely," Thomas called after me, but his voice sounded relieved. "Maybe we can have lunch next week and you can see the wedding photos." As I wheeled myself out of St. Michael's Cathedral, passing confused guests and wedding coordinators, I felt strangely calm. Behind me, I heard Rebecca's voice, bright and cheerful now. "Crisis averted. Now we can start on time." Crisis averted, indeed. I made my way to my van in the parking lot, transferred into the driver's seat with practiced movements, and folded my wheelchair into the back. As I started the engine, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. I was still smiling. And then I remembered something very important. Something that would change everything in the next 2 hours. Every contract for this wedding was in my name. Every payment had come from my bank account. The cathedral rental, the reception hall, the catering, the flowers, the band, the photographer, the wedding cake, even that $8,000 dress Rebecca was wearing, all of it belonged to me. Legally. Financially. Completely. I drove home slowly, enjoying the beautiful June afternoon, and pulled out my carefully organized folder of wedding contracts and vendor contact information. 2 hours should be plenty of time to make some very important phone calls. After all, they wanted me gone from their wedding. But without me, there wouldn't be a wedding at all. My hands didn't shake as I spread the wedding contracts across my kitchen table. 37 years as an accountant had taught me to organize everything, and this wedding had been no exception. Every invoice, every receipt, every signed agreement was filed in perfect order. The cathedral rental, $4,200. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. The reception venue, $8,500. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. Catering for 150 guests, $12,000. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. The photographer, $3,800. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. Wedding cake, $850. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. Flowers, $2,400. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. The band, $2,200. Paid in full by Eleanor Matthews. I made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, the way Harold used to like it, and sat back in my wheelchair, looking at the evidence of a mother's love spread across my table. $42,000. Nearly everything I had left after Harold's medical bills. All for a son who was ashamed to have me at his wedding. I picked up my phone and dialed the first number. Bella Vista Reception Hall. This is Marina speaking. Hello, Marina. This is Eleanor Matthews. I have the Sterling Matthews wedding reception booked for this afternoon. Oh yes, Mrs. Matthews. Everything is set up beautifully. Your son's wedding is going to be gorgeous. The flowers arrived an hour ago, Anne. I need to cancel. Silence on the other end. I'm sorry, did you say cancel? But the wedding is in 3 hours. The guests will be arriving soon, and we've already prepared all the food. I understand this is unusual, but I'm the one who paid for everything, and I'm requesting an immediate cancellation. Mrs. Matthews, I don't understand. Did something happen? Is there a family emergency? You could say that, I thought. Let's just say there's been a change in the family dynamic. I'll need you to stop all preparations immediately. But the deposits, and we've already incurred costs. Check your contract, Marina. I believe you'll find there's a clause about the responsible party having full authority over cancellations. I am the responsible party. I could hear papers rustling, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh my. You're right, it's all in your name. But Mrs. Matthews, surely we can work something out. This will be devastating for the couple. I'm sure it will be. My voice remained steady. Please begin shutting down immediately. I'll expect a partial refund according to the contract terms. The next call was to Francesca's catering. Mrs. Matthews? But we're literally loading the trucks right now. The ceremony should be ending soon, and we're supposed to start serving cocktails in an hour. I'm afraid that won't be happening, Francesca. But the shrimp cocktail alone cost $800. And the prime rib for 150 people. We can't just stop now. You can and you will. Check your contract. All payments came from Eleanor Matthews. All authority rests with Eleanor Matthews. I could hear chaos erupting in the background, pots clattering, people shouting questions. Mrs. Matthews, please, I'm begging you. This will ruin our reputation if word gets out that we just abandoned a wedding. Can't we discuss this? There's nothing to discuss. Pack up your trucks and go home. The florist was next. But Mrs. Matthews, the centerpieces are already in place. 25 arrangements of white roses and baby's breath, plus the bridal bouquet and all the boutonnieres. This makes no sense. Please remove everything immediately. Remove them? During the wedding ceremony. Yes. But people will see us taking the flowers away. It'll cause a scene. I almost smiled at that. I imagine it will. The photographer answered on the second ring, sounding harried. Mrs. Matthews? Thank God you called. I've been trying to reach someone about the timeline. The ceremony ran a bit long, and now the bride is insisting on an extra hour of portraits, but that's going to push back the reception photos, Anne. There won't be any reception photos, David. I'm sorry, what? The reception is cancelled. Pack up your equipment. Cancelled? But I'm literally standing in the reception hall right now, and everything looks perfect. The lighting is exactly what we discussed, and the bride specifically requested. The bride specifically requested that I not attend my son's wedding. So I've decided not to pay for it either. A long pause. Mrs. Matthews, I need to confirm this with the groom. This is highly unusual, and I have contracts. The contracts are with me, David. Check your paperwork. While David presumably scrambled for his contracts, I dialed the band leader. Moonlight Serenade, this is Rick. Hello, Rick. This is Eleanor Matthews regarding the Sterling Matthews wedding. Hey, Mrs. Matthews. We're all set up and ready to rock. The bride requested we start with At Last for their first dance, Anne. Rick, I need you to pack up and leave. Leave. But we just finished sound check. The reception starts in 4 to 5 minutes. The reception has been cancelled. Cancelled? Lady, do you know how much equipment we hold in here? We've got 4 hours of music planned, and the dance floor is all set up, Anne. And it's all been paid for by me, which means I have the authority to cancel it. Please start packing. I could hear him covering the phone, probably talking to his band members. When he came back, his voice was tight with anger. Look, I don't know what kind of family drama is going on here, but this is my livelihood. We turned down 3 other gigs for this wedding. That's unfortunate, but my contract clearly states. I didn't even have to finish. The panic in his voice told me he was already checking his paperwork. My phone rang before I could make the next call. Thomas's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring. It rang again immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, I answered. Hello, Thomas. Mom. His voice was frantic, barely controlled. Mom, what's happening? The photographer just walked out, and the catering truck is leaving, and someone said the flowers are being removed from the reception hall. That's correct. What do you mean that's correct? Mom, what did you do? For the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of real emotion. Not sadness, not anger, something that felt almost like relief. I did exactly what you asked me to do, sweetheart. I left. Mom, you don't understand. The whole wedding is falling apart. Rebecca is crying, her parents are furious, and all the guests are standing around confused because there's no reception. I took a sip of my tea. It was still perfectly warm. That does sound stressful. Stressful. Mom, this is a disaster. You have to fix this. Call them back and tell them it was a mistake. A mistake? I repeated softly. Like the mistake of raising a son who would be ashamed of his own mother. I'm not ashamed of you. Rebecca was nervous, and I thought. You thought wrong, Thomas. I could hear Rebecca's voice in the background, shrill and panicked. Tell her she's ruining my life. Tell her she has to fix this. Mom, please. I'm begging you. This is the most important day of my life. It was supposed to be one of the most important days of mine too. The line went quiet except for the sound of chaos in the background. Guests talking loudly, someone crying, footsteps running across what sounded like the cathedral's marble floors. What do you want me to say? Thomas's voice cracked. I'm sorry, okay? I handled it badly. You didn't handle it badly, Thomas. You didn't handle it at all. When your fiancée called me an embarrassment, you said nothing. When she suggested I was going to ruin your perfect day just by existing, you agreed with her. I didn't agree with her. Your silence was agreement enough. Another voice came on the line, Rebecca, who had apparently grabbed the phone. Eleanor, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is insane. You can't just destroy a wedding because your feelings got hurt. I almost laughed at that. My feelings got hurt. Yes. And now you're having some kind of breakdown and taking it out on everyone. There are 150 people here who traveled from all over the country, and you're embarrassing them and us with this tantrum. Rebecca, I said, my voice calm as still water, let me ask you something. When you woke up this morning, did you think about calling me? Did you wonder if I was excited about today? Did you consider that I might have been looking forward to watching my only child get married? This isn't about. Or did you spend the morning worried about how my wheelchair would look in your photos? Silence. Did you think about the woman who worked 16-hour days to pay for your wedding dress? Or were you just concerned about whether I'd clash with your color scheme? You're twisting everything. Rebecca's voice was getting higher, more desperate. I was just trying to make sure everything went smoothly. And how smoothly is it going now? I could hear Thomas take the phone back. Mom, whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Everyone understands that we hurt you. But please, You have to stop this. There has to be a way to fix this. I looked around my quiet kitchen, at the wedding contracts still spread across my table, at the framed photo of Thomas's law school graduation where he'd thanked me in his speech for being the strongest woman I know. Fix what, exactly? The wedding. The reception. Call everyone back and tell them to come back. Thomas, do you remember what you said to me when you graduated law school? What? Mom, this isn't the time for. You said I was the strongest woman you knew. You said you hoped someday you'd have half my courage. I meant that. Did you? Because this morning, when I needed you to show just a fraction of that courage, when I needed you to stand up for me the way I stood up for you your entire life, you failed. The background noise was getting louder. I could hear Rebecca crying, her mother's voice sharp with anger, men's voices trying to calm everyone down. So what happens now? Thomas asked, and for the first time, he sounded like the little boy who used to ask me to check for monsters under his bed. Now you figure out how to explain to 150 guests why there's no reception. You figure out how to tell Rebecca's parents why their daughter's perfect wedding fell apart. You figure out how to live with choosing her embarrassment over your mother's dignity. Mom, please. I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off. I had one more call to make, and I wanted to make it in peace. I dialed the final number on my list. Giuseppe's Bakery. This is Maria. Hello, Maria. This is Eleanor Matthews about the Sterling Matthews wedding cake. Oh yes, the 3-tier vanilla cake with buttercream roses. It's absolutely beautiful, Mrs. Matthews. We delivered it an hour ago, and it's set up perfectly at the reception hall. I need you to pick it up. Pick it up. But it's a wedding cake. The reception is starting soon. The reception has been cancelled. Cancelled? But Mrs. Matthews, this makes no sense. We spent 2 days on that cake. It's already been cut, Anne. It hasn't been cut yet. The reception was supposed to start in 20 minutes. But what about the cake? What do you want us to do with it? I thought about that for a moment. 3 tiers of vanilla cake with buttercream roses. Thomas's favorite flavor. I'd insisted on vanilla because he'd loved vanilla cake since he was 5 years old. Donate it to the children's hospital, I said. At least someone should enjoy it. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the afternoon sun slanted through my windows. Somewhere across town, 150 wedding guests were probably standing around in formal wear, wondering what had happened to their dinner. Thomas and Rebecca were likely in the middle of the worst fight of their relationship. Her parents were probably threatening to sue someone. And I was having the most peaceful afternoon I'd had in months. My doorbell rang an hour later. Through the peephole, I could see Thomas standing on my front porch, still in his tuxedo but looking disheveled. His bow tie hung loose around his neck, and his hair was messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. He was alone. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Mom. His eyes were red-rimmed, whether from crying or stress, I couldn't tell. Hello, Thomas. Shouldn't you be at your reception? He let out a bitter laugh. What reception? Half the guests have left. Rebecca's mother is threatening to sue you, and Rebecca isn't speaking to me. I see. We stood there in silence for a moment. My son, my tall, successful, handsome son, looked smaller somehow, standing on my doorstep in his expensive tuxedo that had lost all its grandeur. Can I come in? I considered this. Are you here to apologize, or are you here to try to convince me to fix your mess? He stopped, looked down at his polished shoes. I don't know. Both, maybe. Then no, you can't come in. His head snapped up. Mom, please. We need to talk about this. We needed to talk about this 6 hours ago, when your fiancée was calling me an embarrassment. We needed to talk about it when she said my wheelchair would ruin her perfect photos. We especially needed to talk about it when you stood there and said nothing. I was trying to keep the peace. By sacrificing me for it. Thomas leaned against my door frame, and for a moment, he looked exactly like he had at 16 when he'd crashed my car and had to tell me about it. Rebecca left, he said quietly. Left the reception. Left me. She said. He swallowed hard. She said I was weak. She said any man who would let his mother destroy his wedding wasn't worth marrying. I felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction, exactly, but a kind of grim vindication. And what did you tell her? I told her you were hurting, and that you had every right to be. I told her we were wrong. I was wrong. He corrected himself quickly. I was wrong, Mom. I should have defended you. I should have told her that you're my mother and you belong wherever you want to be. I studied his face, looking for sincerity. And what changed your mind? The fact that she left you, or the fact that you finally realized what you did? He was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, both. When she walked out, she said she couldn't marry someone who came from that kind of family. She meant you, Mom. She meant that having a mother in a wheelchair made me less worthy somehow. And that bothered you. It destroyed me. His voice cracked. Because I realized I'd been thinking the same way. Not about the wheelchair, but I was ashamed. Not of you, but of where I came from. The modest house, the second-hand clothes, the fact that you worked as a secretary to put me through school. This was closer to honesty than I'd heard from him in years. Rebecca comes from money, he continued. Her father owns half the law firms in the city. Her mother has never worked a day in her life. And I wanted to fit into that world so badly that I forgot where I actually came from. You forgot who raised you. I forgot who I was. He looked up at me, and I saw the little boy I'd raised. Mom, I know I can't undo today. I know I can't take back what happened at the church. But I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry. Not because my wedding fell apart, but because I failed you when you needed me most. I crossed my arms, considering his words. And what about Rebecca? What about her? Are you going to try to get her back? Convince her that it was all my fault and that you're really on her side? Thomas shook his head firmly. No. It's over. When she showed me who she really was today, someone who could look at the woman who raised me and see only an embarrassment, I realized I didn't want to marry her anyway. That's convenient. It's not convenient, it's heartbreaking. I thought I loved her, Mom. I thought we were building a life together. But you can't build a life with someone who has no respect for the people who made you who you are. I felt my resolve softening slightly, but I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Thomas, do you have any idea what today cost me? The money. Mom, I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. It might take a while, but not the money. I cut him off. Do you know what it cost me to hear my own son choose his fiancée's comfort over his mother's dignity? Do you know what it felt like to sit in that church and realize that the little boy I sacrificed everything for had grown up to be ashamed of me? Tears started falling down his cheeks then, and he didn't try to hide them. I wasn't ashamed of you. I was ashamed of myself. I was ashamed that I couldn't give you the kind of life Rebecca's family has. I was ashamed that you had to work so hard for everything. I was ashamed that when people looked at us, they'd see struggle instead of success. And you thought hiding me away would solve that. I thought. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, smearing tears across his face. I thought if I could just get through the wedding, if I could just make Rebecca happy, then afterwards we could all be a family again. I thought I was protecting you from her judgment. By agreeing with it. By being a coward. He straightened up, looking me directly in the eyes. Mom, I was a coward today. I failed you, and I failed myself, and I failed every lesson you ever taught me about standing up for what's right. I studied my son's face for a long moment. The tears were real. The regret was real. But so was my heartbreak. Thomas, I said slowly, do you remember when you were 8 and Billy Henderson was picking on that little girl with the leg braces at school? He nodded, confusion flickering in his eyes. What did I teach you to do? You said that we stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. You said that's what makes us good people. And what did you do? I told Billy to stop. I walked Jenny to class every day until he left her alone. And today? The silence stretched between us. Thomas's face crumpled as the full weight of his failure hit him. Today I became Billy Henderson, he whispered. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer than the cold anger I'd been carrying. Thomas, I need you to understand something. What you did today, choosing Rebecca's prejudices over your mother's dignity, that wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a betrayal of everything I raised you to be. I know. I don't think you do. I gripped the door frame, leaning forward slightly. For 35 years, I have been your champion. When teachers said you weren't college material, I fought for you. When you couldn't afford law school, I worked nights and weekends. When you doubted yourself, I believed in you. I never, not once, asked you to be ashamed of me. Mom, I'm not finished. My voice was steady but firm. Today, you asked me to be ashamed of myself. You asked me to hide who I am so that your fiancé wouldn't be uncomfortable. You asked me to pretend that 35 years of love and sacrifice meant nothing compared to her perfect wedding photos. Thomas was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. But here's what you need to understand, son. I didn't destroy your wedding out of spite. I didn't cancel everything because I wanted revenge. Then why? Because I needed you to see the truth. Rebecca didn't love you. She loved the version of you that came without complications. Without a mother in a wheelchair. Without a past that didn't match her perfect future. I paused, watching understanding dawn in his eyes. And you were so eager to be that version of yourself that you were willing to erase me to get it. Thomas slumped against my door frame. What have I done? You've learned a hard lesson about the cost of betraying the people who love you. I reached out and touched his cheek gently. But Thomas, you're still my son. And I still love you. His eyes filled with hope. Does that mean you forgive me? It means I love you enough to tell you the truth, even when it hurts. Forgiveness, that's going to take time. Trust has to be rebuilt, and that doesn't happen with apologies. It happens with actions. What can I do? How can I make this right? I considered this carefully. You can start by figuring out who you really are without Rebecca's approval. You can remember that the people who love you at your worst are the ones worth keeping. And you can understand that your mother, wheelchair and all, is not something to be hidden away or ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of you. Then prove it. Not with words, but with choices. The next time someone suggests I'm an embarrassment, what will you do? I'll tell them they are wrong. I'll tell them you're the strongest, most incredible woman I know. And if they don't like it, then they are not the kind of people I want in my life. I felt the first real smile I'd had all day cross my face. That's a start. Thomas straightened his shoulders, looking more like the man I'd raised. Mom, I know I have no right to ask this, but can I come home? Not to live, just, can we have dinner together? Can we talk about something other than this disaster? Can I just sit in your kitchen and remember what it feels like to be your son instead of someone pretending to be better than he is? I looked at this broken, humbled young man in his expensive tuxedo, and I saw past the lawyer, past the social climber, past the coward who had failed me today. I saw the little boy who used to help me fold laundry, who read to me when my back hurt from too many double shifts, who once told his whole second-grade class that his mom was his hero. Yes, I said, stepping aside to let him in. But you're making dinner, and you're wearing an apron over that tuxedo. For the first time all day, Thomas smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one he wore for clients and colleagues. Deal. The coffee shop was busy for a Tuesday morning, filled with the usual mix of students, professionals, and retirees. I sat in my wheelchair at a table near the window, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk outside. 2 Earl Grey teas and a blueberry muffin. Thomas set the order down on our table and took the seat across from me. These weekly coffee dates had become our tradition over the past few months, a way to rebuild what we'd lost. How's the new apartment? I asked. Good. Small, but good. Turns out I don't need nearly as much space when I'm not trying to impress anyone. He smiled ruefully. Amazing how much money you save when you stop caring about having the right address. Thomas had moved out of the expensive downtown loft he'd shared with Rebecca and into a modest one-bedroom closer to his office. He'd also started taking public defender cases pro bono, working with people who reminded him, he said, of where he came from. And work. Better. I turned down the corporate partnership track last week. I raised an eyebrow. The one you've been working toward for 5 years. The one that would have required me to bill 80 hours a week and forget I have a family. He sipped his tea. I decided I'd rather be a good lawyer than a rich one. Rebecca would have hated that decision. Rebecca hated a lot of things about who I really am. Thomas was quiet for a moment. I saw her last week, actually. At the courthouse. How did that go? She pretended not to see me. Her mother was with her. Apparently she's engaged to some investment banker now. Someone whose family fits better with her image of herself. Are you sad about that? Thomas considered the question seriously. I'm sad about the time I wasted trying to be someone else. But I'm not sad about losing her. You can't miss someone who never really loved you in the first place. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the world go by outside the window. Mom, Thomas said eventually, I never properly thanked you. For what? For loving me enough to let my wedding fail. For caring more about my character than my happiness. For teaching me that the only approval that matters is the approval of people who know who you really are. I reached across the table and took his hand. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We love you through your mistakes until you remember who you're supposed to be. Even when those mistakes hurt you. Especially then. I squeezed his hand. Because that's when love matters most. As we sat there, mother and son, in a modest coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, I realized something. This quiet moment of connection, this honest conversation, this simple pleasure of my son's company, this was worth more than any grand wedding could ever have been. Thomas was right about one thing. Love has to survive your worst moments to mean anything at all. And ours had survived. The coffee shop door chimed as new customers entered, and I watched Thomas automatically look up to see if any of them needed help finding a table. Small kindnesses, everyday courtesies. These were the things that showed me my son had found his way back to himself. Same time next week, he asked as we prepared to leave. Wouldn't miss it, I said, meaning every word. Outside, Thomas helped me into my van and loaded my wheelchair with the easy efficiency of someone who no longer saw it as an embarrassment but simply as part of who his mother was. I love you, Mom, he said before closing the door. I love you too, sweetheart. All of you. Even the parts that sometimes make mistakes. As I drove home, I thought about that terrible day 6 months ago when my son had failed me so completely. I thought about the wedding that never was, the relationships that ended, the lessons learned the hard way. But mostly, I thought about how sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst impulses, even when, especially when, that someone is your own child. They had wanted me gone from that wedding. But in the end, my absence had saved us all.